Title: The Devil's Harvest. Ravenswood was a small town nestled in the heart of rural England, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. It was a quiet place, where everyone knew everyone else, and nothing ever seemed to change. But in recent weeks, something had been off. At first, it was just small things: a missing book from the local library, a strange noise in the night, a misplaced item or two. But as time went on, these small incidents began to accumulate, and the townsfolk started to feel a sense of unease. It was as if something was watching them, waiting for its chance to strike. The first person to see the black goat was Emily Wilson, a young woman who worked at the local bakery. She had been up early that morning, preparing for the day's batch of bread, when she caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. At first, she thought it was just a stray dog or a stray cat, but as she turned to look, she saw that it was neither. It was a goat, but unlike any she had ever seen before. Its coat was black as coal, and its eyes seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched the goat disappear into the trees. She told no one about what she had seen, but as the day went on, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. As the sun began to set, Emily made her way home from work, lost in thought. She didn't notice anything out of the ordinary as she walked down Main Street, but when she turned onto her own street, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The black goat was standing outside her house, its eyes fixed on her. Emily froze in terror as she stared at the goat. She knew that she had seen it before this morning, but this time it seemed closer, more real. She felt like she was being pulled towards it, as if some unseen force was drawing her towards its eerie gaze. As she stood there, frozen with fear, Emily realized that something was very wrong in Ravenswood. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the goat vanished into thin air. Emily stumbled back into her house, her heart racing with fear. She knew that she had to tell someone about what she had seen, but who would believe her? The next day, Emily tried to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over her. She went about her daily routine, trying to focus on the mundane tasks at hand. But she couldn't shake off the image of the black goat, and the sense that something was off in Ravenswood. As the day went on, Emily started to notice that others were acting strangely. Her friends and co-workers were all seeming to be a little off. They were making irrational decisions, and behaving in ways that didn't seem like them. At first, Emily thought it was just her being paranoid. But as the day went on, she started to notice that others were noticing the same thing. People were talking about it in hushed tones, and Emily even caught a few whispers about the black goat behind her back. It wasn't until she saw her best friend, Sarah, that Emily realized that something was seriously wrong. Sarah was normally a calm and rational person, but as Emily approached her at the bakery, she saw that Sarah was acting like a completely different person. Sarah was normally meticulous about her work, but today she was careless and sloppy. She was chatting with the other customers, laughing loudly and making silly jokes. It was like she had never met Emily before. "Hey, Sarah, what's going on?" Emily asked, trying to keep her tone light. Sarah turned to her with a goofy grin. "Oh, Emily, I'm just so happy. I've never felt so alive." Emily's heart sank. This wasn't Sarah. This was some kind of imposter. "Sarah, what's going on?" Emily asked again, trying to get through to her friend. Sarah's grin faltered for a moment, and then she looked at Emily with a strange, glazed-over expression. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. Emily knew that something was seriously wrong. She tried to get Sarah to come home with her, but Sarah refused. She said she had to go out and celebrate the New World Order. Emily watched in horror as Sarah walked out of the bakery, laughing and chatting with the other customers. She knew that she had to get help. She rushed back to her house and grabbed her phone, dialing the number of Dr. Jenkins, the local psychiatrist. She explained what was happening to him in a frantic voice. Dr. Jenkins listened calmly, his voice soothing and reassuring. "Don't worry, Emily," he said. "I'll be right there." Emily waited anxiously for Dr. Jenkins to arrive. She knew that she had to get to the bottom of this strange phenomenon. As she waited, she started to notice more and more people acting strangely. The town was descending into chaos. And then, as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The townsfolk who had been acting strangely returned to their normal selves. The black goat was nowhere to be seen. But Emily knew that it would be back. And next time, it might be too late. She looked out at the quiet town, wondering what was going on. She knew that she had to get to the bottom of this mystery before it was too late. And then she heard it. A faint bleating sound. From outside her house. Emily's heart sank as she looked out at the black goat standing in her front yard. This time, it wasn't alone. Behind it stood a group of people, their eyes glazed over with an eerie light. The black goat was just getting started. And this time, it seemed like nothing could stop it. Emily's heart was racing as she stared at the black goat and the group of people behind it. She knew that she had to get to the bottom of this strange phenomenon, and fast. She grabbed her phone and dialed Dr. Jenkins again. "It's happening again," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The black goat is back, and it's got a group of people with it." Dr. Jenkins' voice was calm and reassuring. "I'm on my way, Emily. Just stay calm and try to observe what's happening." Emily nodded, even though she knew Dr. Jenkins couldn't see her. She took a deep breath and tried to focus on the scene in front of her. As she watched, the group of people behind the black goat began to move towards her. Their eyes were glazed over, and their movements were stiff and robotic. Emily knew that she had to get out of there. She turned to run back into her house, but as she did, she heard a faint whispering in her ear. "Come closer," it said. Emily spun around, but there was no one there. The whispering seemed to come from all around her. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that something was very wrong. She knew that she had to get help. She turned and ran back into her house, slamming the door shut behind her. She locked it and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. As she waited for Dr. Jenkins to arrive, Emily tried to think about what could be happening. She knew that the black goat was somehow connected to the strange occurrences in Ravenswood, but she had no idea what its purpose was. She looked around her house, trying to distract herself from the fear that was building inside her. That was when she saw it. A small book on her coffee table. It was an old leather-bound book, with strange symbols and markings etched into its cover. Emily felt a surge of excitement as she picked up the book. She opened it, and was shocked by what she saw. The book was filled with strange rituals and incantations, written in a language she didn't recognize. She knew that this must be the key to understanding what was happening in Ravenswood. She had to find out who wrote this book, and what they were trying to achieve. As Dr. Jenkins arrived at her house, Emily showed him the book. He examined it carefully, his eyes scanning the pages. "This is an ancient text," he said. "It's written in a language that's been dead for centuries." Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that this book was much more than just a simple text. "It's connected to the black goat," Dr. Jenkins said. "I'm sure of it." "But what does it mean?" Emily asked, feeling a sense of desperation creeping over her. Dr. Jenkins looked at her seriously. "I think we're dealing with something very powerful here," he said. Something that could destroy our town. Emily felt a sense of dread as she realized that they were facing something much bigger than they had ever imagined. But she knew that they had to keep going. They had to find out what was behind the black goat's strange behavior and stop it before it was too late. She looked at Dr. Jenkins, determination in her eyes. "Let's get started," she said. Dr. Jenkins nodded. "Together," he said. And with that, they began their investigation into the mysterious black goat and its sinister powers. They scoured the town for clues, following leads and interviewing witnesses. They pored over ancient texts and searched for connections between the strange occurrences in Ravenswood. As they delved deeper into their research, they started to uncover some shocking truths about the town's history. Ravenswood had a dark past, filled with stories of witchcraft and curses. And at the center of it all was a mysterious figure known only as the Shepherd. Emily and Dr. Jenkins knew that they had to find out more about the Shepherd if they were going to stop the black goat's sinister plans. But as they dug deeper into their research, they started to realize that they were being watched. The black goat seemed to be always lurking just out of sight, its eyes fixed on them with an unblinking gaze. And then, one night, Emily received a message from an unknown sender. "Meet me at the old church at midnight," it said. Emily knew that she had to go. She felt a sense of trepidation as she made her way to the old church, but she knew that she had to uncover the truth about the Shepherd and the black goat. As she approached the church, she saw a figure waiting for her outside. It was an old man with a kind face and piercing eyes. "Welcome," he said. "I've been waiting for you." And with that, Emily's journey into the heart of darkness began. Emily followed the old man into the church, her heart racing with anticipation. She had no idea what to expect, but she knew that she had to find out more about the Shepherd and the black goat. As they walked down the aisle, Emily noticed that the church was eerily silent. The pews were empty, and the only sound was the creaking of the old wooden benches. The old man led her to a small altar at the front of the church, where a single candle flickered in the darkness. He turned to her and smiled. "I am Father Michael," he said. "And I have been waiting for you, Emily." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she looked at Father Michael's eyes. They seemed to bore into her soul, and she felt a sense of unease. "What do you want from me?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Father Michael's smile grew wider. "I want to show you something," he said. "Something that will change your life forever." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small book. It was bound in black leather, and it seemed to glow with an otherworldly energy. "This is the Book of the Shepherd," Father Michael said. "It contains the secrets of our order and the key to unlocking our true power." Emily's eyes widened as she took the book from Father Michael. It was heavy with ancient knowledge, and she could feel its power coursing through her veins. "This is incredible," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Father Michael nodded. "It is indeed," he said. "But be warned, Emily. Once you know the secrets contained within this book, there is no going back." Emily felt a sense of trepidation as she opened the book and began to read. The words were written in a language she didn't understand, but as she touched the pages, she felt a sudden surge of knowledge flood through her mind. She saw visions of ancient rituals and ceremonies, of secret societies and hidden agendas. She saw the Shepherd, standing tall and powerful, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. And then, she saw the black goat. It was standing on a hill, its eyes fixed on Emily with an unblinking gaze. She felt a sense of dread wash over her as she realized that the black goat was watching her, waiting for her to make a move. Father Michael's voice broke into her thoughts. "You see, Emily," he said, "the black goat is not just a simple animal. It is a symbol of our order, a symbol of our power and our strength. Emily felt a sense of unease as she looked at Father Michael. She knew that he was hiding something from her, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. "What do you want from me?" Emily asked again, trying to keep her voice steady. Father Michael smiled once more. "I want you to join us," he said. "I want you to become one of us." Emily felt a sense of horror as she realized what Father Michael was asking of her. She knew that she couldn't join this cult, no matter what they promised. "I won't do it," Emily said firmly. Father Michael's smile faltered for a moment, and then he nodded. "Very well," he said. "But know this, Emily. You will never be able to leave us once you join us. We will bind you to our will, and you will be forever changed." Emily knew that she had to get out of there as fast as she could. She turned to leave, but as she did, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Father Michael's face inches from hers, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. "You will never be able to leave us," he whispered. "We will always find you." And with that, Emily fled the church, determined to uncover the truth about the shepherd and his cult once and for all. Emily ran out of the church, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that she had to get as far away from Father Michael and his cult as possible. She didn't stop running until she was back in the safety of her own home. She locked the door and leaned against it, trying to catch her breath. As she stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just narrowly escaped something terrible. She knew that she had to tell Dr. Jenkins about what had happened, but she was afraid of what he might think. Dr. Jenkins had always been skeptical of the supernatural, and Emily knew that he would never believe her if she told him about the cult and the shepherd. But she knew that she couldn't keep this secret to herself. She took a deep breath and picked up the phone. She dialed Dr. Jenkins' number and waited for him to answer. When he did, Emily told him everything. She told him about the cult, and Father Michael, and the black goat. She told him about the book, and the secrets it contained. Dr. Jenkins listened quietly, his voice steady and calm. When Emily finished speaking, he nodded thoughtfully. "I think it's time we took a closer look at this cult," he said. "I'll start digging into their history, and see what I can find out." Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She knew that Dr. Jenkins would be able to help her uncover the truth about the cult. But as they hung up the phone, Emily felt a strange sensation in her head. It was like someone was whispering in her ear, telling her that she was making a mistake. She shook her head, trying to clear the feeling away. But it only grew stronger. And then, Emily saw it. A vision of the apocalypse. The world was ending, and all hell was breaking loose. The skies were filled with fire and brimstone, and the earth was shaking with earthquakes. Emily saw people running and screaming, trying to escape the destruction. She saw buildings crumbling to dust, and cars overturned on the streets. And then, she saw the shepherd. He was standing tall and proud, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. He was holding a book, and its pages were burning with flames. Emily knew that this was the end. She knew that she had to act fast if she was going to save the world. She grabbed her phone and dialed Dr. Jenkins' number again. When he answered, Emily spoke quickly. "Dr. Jenkins," she said. "We have to act fast. The apocalypse is coming." Dr. Jenkins' voice was calm and steady. "What do you mean?" he asked. "The shepherd is bringing about the end of the world," Emily said. "We have to stop him." Dr. Jenkins paused for a moment before speaking again. "I'm on my way," he said. Emily knew that she had to act fast. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the house, determined to stop the shepherd and save the world from destruction. As she ran, she could feel the apocalypse getting closer and closer. She could hear the screams of people around her and see the buildings crumbling around her. But Emily knew that she couldn't give up. She had to keep going, no matter what lay ahead. And so she ran, driven by a determination to save the world from destruction. Emily ran through the streets, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the apocalypse closing in around her, and she knew that she had to act fast. She saw Dr. Jenkins' car racing towards her, and she ran towards it. She flung open the door and jumped in, shouting at Dr. Jenkins to drive as fast as he could. As they sped through the streets, Emily could see the chaos all around her. Buildings were crumbling, and people were running for their lives. The skies were filled with ash and smoke, and the air was thick with the smell of fire. Dr. Jenkins pulled up in front of a small church, and Emily jumped out of the car. She ran into the church, shouting at Dr. Jenkins to follow her. Inside, she found the shepherd standing at the altar, his eyes blazing with an otherworldly energy. He was holding a book, and its pages were burning with flames. "Stop him," Emily shouted at Dr. Jenkins. "He's bringing about the end of the world." Dr. Jenkins looked at the shepherd, and then back at Emily. "I don't know if I can stop him," he said. Emily felt a surge of determination. She knew that she had to act fast. She ran towards the shepherd, determined to stop him. But as she reached him, she felt a strange sensation. It was like time was slowing down, and she was moving in slow motion. The shepherd looked at her, his eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. And then, he spoke. "You should not have come here," he said. "You should not have tried to stop me." Emily felt a wave of fear wash over her. She knew that she was no match for the shepherd's power. And then, everything went black. When Emily came to, she was lying on the floor of the church. Dr. Jenkins was standing over her, his eyes filled with concern. "What happened?" Emily asked, trying to sit up. Dr. Jenkins helped her up, his face grave. "The shepherd is gone," he said. "But I think you may have unleashed something terrible." Emily looked around the church, feeling a sense of unease. She knew that something was wrong. As they left the church, Emily looked up at the sky. It was dark and foreboding, and she could see a strange glow on the horizon. "What is that?" she asked Dr. Jenkins. Dr. Jenkins looked up, his eyes filled with worry. "I don't know," he said. "But I think it may be the beginning of the end." And with that, Emily felt a sense of dread wash over her. She knew that she had unleashed something terrible upon the world. And as she walked away from the church, she couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Emily and Dr. Jenkins walked away from the church, unsure of what lay ahead. They had tried to stop the shepherd, but it seemed that they had only unleashed a greater evil. As they walked, Emily felt a strange sensation in her head. It was like a voice was whispering in her ear, telling her that she was the key to the apocalypse. She looked at Dr. Jenkins, but he just shook his head. "I don't know what's happening," he said. "But I think we need to get out of here." They walked for hours, trying to find a way to escape the city. But as they walked, Emily could feel the darkness spreading around her. She could see the people around her changing, their eyes turning black and their skin becoming gray. And then, she saw it. A massive wall of darkness, stretching across the horizon. "It's here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Jenkins looked at her, his eyes filled with fear. "We have to get out of here," he said. But it was too late. The darkness enveloped them, and Emily felt herself being pulled towards it. She closed her eyes, feeling the darkness consume her. And when she opened them again, she was alone. the world was gone. The city was gone. Everything was gone. All that was left was the darkness. And in the darkness, Emily saw a figure. It was the shepherd, standing tall and proud. "You should have stayed out of this," he said, his voice echoing in her mind. Emily felt a sense of despair wash over her. She knew that she had unleashed something terrible upon the world. And then, everything went black.